Hello, hello. Thank you for coming to class now. You're just in time. Don't worry. So, I believe that today is the day to learn about this little lad right here, right? So, I say we get right into it. Does anyone have any questions before we start the class? About my finger. Oh, I see. Basically, a previous student brought in their Pokémon, and let's just say that he thought my finger was a berry. And let's also say that the Pokémon definitely knew the move bite. So, this is how we ended up like this. But enough about that. Enough about me. Let's focus on Eevee, who is the subject of the lesson for today. So, I have my Eevee here. Let's get right into it. As you know, Eevee is a normal type Pokemon. He's relatively small, and as you can see, he has brown fur all over his body, except on his collar, which is cream colored, and it's also so soft and so fluffy. Aren't you, Eevee? He's so fluffy. Fluff, 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 fluff. He also has a cream colored tip of the tail, as you can see here. And did you know that the pattern of Eevee's tail is actually different depending on their gender? So this Eevee right here is a male because it has this sort of spiky pattern on the tail. Spiky, 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 spiky. If this Eevee would have been born a female, it would have had a more rounded pattern on the tail, kind of like this. It would have been rounded, 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 rounded. This one has a spiky pattern. Spiky, 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 spiky. Meaning that it is a male. If it had a rounded pattern, rounded pattern, rounded pattern, it would mean that it is a female. But my friend here is born a male. Speaking about their gender, Eevee is really interesting because wild Eevees seem to have a very strange gender ratio, as there seems to be so many more male Eevees than female Eevees. Currently, we estimate that around 87.5% of all Eevees, are male, and only the remaining 12.5% are female. This means that if you have a room of 9 Eevees, only one of them will be a female, which is so crazy to think about. Eevee loves to get his little ears caressed. At least my Eevee does. All of his body, to be honest. He just loves being caressed and cared for. So, as you might already know, Eevee is known to evolve into a variety of different Pokemon. Do you know how many Pokemon Eevee can evolve into? Let's count them, okay? Its evolutions are Vaporeon, Jolteon, Flareon, Espeon, Umbreon, Leafeon, Glaceon, and Sylveon. That makes 8 Eevee evolutions. 8. Which is the most of any Pokemon to date. And there are even rumors that a new evolution might be discovered soon. I have some friends, some fellow researchers that are looking into it. Potentially a flying type. Who knows? Maybe his little ears become wings and he flies. That'd be a discovery for sure. Now we're going to go into all 8 evolutions that we know of in time. But don't worry, we're gonna take it slow. But first, we have to know why this little fella can evolve into so many Pokemon to begin with, right? So, as it turns out, Eevee's genetic makeup is quite unstable. This means that its genes are really easily influenced by its surroundings, making it really easy for Eevee to evolve in order to adapt to its environment and its surroundings. So it does this, and this is something that Eevee does in order to adapt, in order to survive, in order to... It's generally a positive thing. For example, if Eevee was to live in a cold, icy area, it might be beneficial for it to become an ice-type Pokemon to better withstand the harsh conditions of the cold weather or the blizzards or whatever there might be. Or for example, if it lives in a forest, maybe becoming a grass type could be of benefit for it as well. This is just one of the many mysteries of Eevees, since no other Pokemon can do what Eevee does, and especially not to this degree. And it's one of the reasons that so many scientists are so fascinated with Eevees. And of course, there's also the fact that they are so cute and friendly, which makes them a great partner for everyone, not just for Pokemon trainers, like Eevee and I here. Alright, Eevee, I'm gonna have to stop caressing you for a bit. I have to teach a bit, okay? I'm gonna put you on the side here. You can watch, you can learn as well. Who knows, maybe you might want to become one of these at some point. So, obviously I don't have 8 Eevees that I can evolve just like that. So, I brought you some pictures. So first up, we're gonna start with Vaporeon, who is the water type. Which, if you know your type matchups, which I really hope you do, because I believe you have a test on the type chart coming up soon. So, if you know the type chart, what are the weaknesses of water types, in this case of Vaporeon? They're weak to grass and electric. Very good. We're just not gonna focus too much on the type chart today, since I know you have a test coming soon. So I just figured we might as well check out the weaknesses quickly, just to help out with your test. I am a professor, after all. I'm meant to do these things. So, the main question: how does Eevee evolve into Vaporeon? Vaporeon. How does Eevee evolve into Vaporeon? Do you know the answer? Maybe you can see it a bit on the reflection back here. The paper is not a stick, maybe. So, because Eevee's genetic makeup is quite unstable, simply exposing Eevee to a water stone, exposing Eevee to a water stone will cause it to evolve into Vaporeon. It's just what happens. Let me take a quick detour. Here, I think it's very important to learn that if you're scared of your Eevee randomly just evolving, we found out that having your Eevee, or any Pokemon really, hold an Everstone will prevent the Pokemon from evolving. My Eevee is currently holding one until he's sure he knows to what he wants to evolve into, because I would love for him to choose if he even wants to evolve. I love him as he is, and I'd be super happy if he chooses to remain a cute little Eevee for his whole life. Anyways, let's go back to Vaporeon now. So, when evolving, Vaporeon grows gills in order to breathe underwater, as well as having a long tail that is adapted to the water in order for Vaporeon to have an easier time swimming. Because it is a water type, it tends to live in or near the water. Now, when it comes to a battling sense, I guess, Vaporeon is known for having the most amount of health points out of all the other evolutions, meaning that it's built to take some hits if necessary. Health points. That's what Vaporeon excels at. Okay, so next up we have Jolteon, who is the electric type evolution, meaning that its only weakness is Go. Ground type attacks. Ground type attacks. Ground type attacks. Very good. This is an easier one because there's only one. But if you forget the one weakness, then you don't know any of them. But very good. Now, similarly to Vaporeon, Jolteon evolves from Eevee. When it is exposed to a Thunderstone. When evolving, every hair on its body is said to stand sharply and get charged with electricity. Just imagine this little fella with all its body spiking out, getting charged with electricity. Jolteon is also the fastest evolution, which is crazy, because look at these little legs. Can you imagine them getting charged with electricity and running super fast? Would you like that, Eevee? Would you like to be the fastest you've ever been? It'd be crazy to see you running around even faster than you already do. Anyways, let's move on to the next one, who is Flareon, who, as you can guess, is the fire type, meaning it is weak to ground, rock, and water. Very good. Just making sure you're gonna ace that test. Flareon evolves with, believe it or not, a fire stone. Fire Pokemon, fire stone. Makes sense. Now, Flareon, it has the highest physical attack stat out of all of the evolutions, so it can definitely pack a punch. However, its soft fur is also great for cuddling, and it emits nice and warm heat, making it perfect for a cold day in winter. Imagine if Eevee snuggle up next to and just have a nice afternoon or a tough day after class, after teaching would be great. But you're so fluffy as you are already. I love you just as you are. So, let's put you back on the side here. You keep distracting me. Let's move on to the fourth evolution. We're almost halfway there. This one is Espeon. It's a psychic type, which means it is weak to go. Bug, ghost, and dark types. Very good. We're gonna keep these weaknesses going for all of them, just for fun. I am a professor after all. I have to make sure that you learn. Even if it's not my lecture specifically. So, Espeon is tied in first place with Glaceon, which we will get to, for the highest special attack stat. And it is a quite fast Pokemon, and it's definitely more focusing on using its special attack and defense rather than the physical attributes. So, the question now, how did you evolve little Eevee over here into an Espeon? It's actually simple. I wouldn't say it's as simple as just giving it a stun, but it's quite simple, because in order for Eevee, little Eevee over here, to evolve into Espeon, it needs to be leveled up during the daytime. So, just during the day, while having a high friendship with its trainer. Basically, you have to love your Eevee, and it has to love you back, and you have to level him up during the day. Very self-explanatory. You basically have to love your Eevee, which you should do, even if you don't want to get an Espeon. You should love your Eevee and all your Pokemon as much as possible. They're basically family, and you should love your family. Anyways, it's said that Espeon can predict the future of certain things, like for example the weather, or even its opponent's next move in a battle. Its psychic powers are definitely a force to be reckoned with, but they can also be useful in many ways, like for example helping move something. It doesn't have to be specifically for a battle, which is something that I would have really enjoyed when I moved into my new lab. Instead of having to carry all these boxes, I could just have you here use your psychic powers to move the boxes. But don't worry, Eevee still helped me with all his might. He moved all the things he could. So, moving on. Next up we have Umbreon. And as you already know, I'm sure you already know, but it's weak to what? Fighting, Bug and Fairy. Very good. Umbreon is known as the defensive powerhouse of the evolutions, as it has the highest special defense tied with Sylveon, and has really solid HP and physical defense to go with it. It evolves exactly like Espeon, exactly the same way, except at night instead of during the day. It's at night. So you have to have high friendship and level it up at night, and you get yourself an Umbreon. This is said to be because the moon's aura affects Eevee's genetic structure, causing it to evolve. Because of this, it becomes a nocturnal Pokemon, using its developed eyes to see in the darkness. It's really interesting to me that something as far away and magical as the moon can even affect Eevee and cause it to evolve. Eevee seems to really want attention today. I guess we're talking about him and all his evolutions, so he's extra happy. He's in an extra good mood today. He loves his little ears getting caressed. Okay, Eevee, let me finish the class, okay? And then we can go get a little lunch and caress you a bit more. Okay. Next up, grass type, Leafeon. This one, would you look at that, has the most weaknesses of all of them so far. Can you name them? There is 5 of them. So, let's go slowly. Flying, good. Poison, very good. Bug, very good. Fire, very good. And lastly, ice, very good. That test's gonna be so easy for you. But don't let the 5 weaknesses fool you though, as Leafeon has the highest physical defense out of all the evolutions. Leafeon is a Pokemon that focuses a lot more on its physical side rather than its special one, which is opposite to Espeon, for example. And it's also relatively faster. Now, traditionally, Eevees have evolved into Leafeon when they train and level up near a moss rock. This one up here, a moss rock. This is different from the stones that Vaporeon, Jolteon and Flareon use, as a moss rock is more like an area rather than an object. It's as if the moss rock charged its surroundings with an aura that made Eevee evolve into Leafeon. And not only Eevee, but we believe that there might be other Pokemon that could evolve in this method as well, but we are not entirely sure. However, recently it was discovered, and this is why the moss rock theory with the other Pokemon is unsure. It was discovered that a leaf stone can also work to get you a Leafeon, which is strange because it was thought not to be possible before. A really interesting fun fact about Leafeon is that since it has become plant-like, it can actually perform photosynthesis, just like a plant. It can perform photosynthesis. 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 Just like a plant. This also means that the air around Leafeon is always clean, which is honestly perfect. It sounds like a dream to always have clean air around you. Let's move on now. We're almost done. Don't worry. He's really looking forward to lunch. Okay, so here comes Glaceon, the ice type, which is weak to fighting, good. Rock, yes. Steel, yes. And one more. Fire, very good. Now, Glaceon has the highest special attack stat of all evolutions. Tied with Espeon. Did I say Espeon twice? Glaceon has the highest special attack out of all the evolutions tied with Espeon. Just in case. But the difference is that defensively, it definitely uses its physical defense more rather than its special defense. Now, Glaceon evolves the exact same way as Leafeon, but we replace the moss or mossy rock with an ice rock. Or alternatively, we also found out recently that an ice stone has the same effect as well. And yes, ice rock, ice stone, ice rock, ice, stone, ice, rock, ice, stone, ice, rock, ice, stone. Yes, they have almost the same name. No, unfortunately, they're not the same. You will learn more about this in your geology class. So, Glaceon can actually control its body heat and freeze not only its fur, but also the atmosphere around it. You know, I don't know if I would like you to be a little Glaceon. I feel like it'd be so cold to the touch, but I'm also sure you'd be amazing on a hot summer day. On like summer vacation when it's way too hot outside, you just get your Glaceon out and it just feels so much better. Anyways, I don't want to focus too much on my summer break yet. You gotta get past your exams first. Okay, we're almost there. We're going to look at the last evolution. This one is Sylveon, who is the fairy type, who is weak to poison and steel. I don't even need to ask you, I'm sure you know, you've been nailing it so far. Sylveon has the highest special defense of all the evolutions, tagged with Umbreon, and it is very specially focused, having a very high special attack stat too. So, how do you go from this to this, from this to this, from this to this? So, it's similar to Umbreon and Espeon, because Sylveon requires high friendship to evolve, so you gotta love it as well, as you should with any evolution. I'm gonna make sure that gets into your head. However, Sylveon has to learn a fairy type move in order to evolve into the fairy type Pokemon. The move will typically be Charm or Baby Doll Eyes, since it's the move that Eevee learns relatively quick. Mine here already knows Charm, and we're working on the Baby Doll Eyes. But the move can also be Dazzling Gleam, Draining Kiss. Any type of fairy type move seems to do the trick. Now, Sylveon uses its ribbons, its little ribbons, and it uses them to send a soothing aura that is said to be so very calming, which honestly sounds perfect after a stressful day at work or a very tough Pokemon battle. Luckily for me, this little boy already calms me down enough as it is, with its soft fur and its playful nature. And class, guess what? That's all the evolutions summarized. I would highly recommend doing your own research before picking out which one you would like. And most importantly, talk to your Eevee to see which one they would like to become. If any at all, Eevee is perfect. 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 As it is. And remember that Pokemon don't need to change or evolve in order to be the best versions of themselves. They don't need to change or evolve. They are perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect as they are. That's the most important lesson that you have to learn for any class. It will not be in an exam, ever. But I believe that that is one of, or if not the most important lesson that I will teach you, which is to love your Pokemon. Don't force them to change. And this applies to not just Pokemon, but anything in life. Oh, do you hear that? Perfect timing. This is the end of the class. So, thank you so much for coming. I'll see you in the next one. Don't forget to study. and let me know what Pokemon you would like to learn about next time. Thank you very much. Say goodbye, Eevee. Bye bye. Oh, hello. Sorry, I was grading some papers. Welcome back, welcome back. You're just in time for the class, don't worry. I have the subject of today's class right here. This is Mudkip, the mudfish Pokemon. And I think we get straight into it, okay? Mudkip is a small, amphibious water-type Pokemon, which is mainly blue in its body, and it has orange star-shaped gills on its cheeks. Star-shaped gills on its cheeks. Mudkip has two big fins, one on its head, and another one on its tail. Tail. Now, it uses the one on its head, the fin on its head, to detect changes in the air and the water currents. And it uses the one on its tail to propel itself through the water and be able to move really fast, propelling itself. Mudkips are generally docile Pokemon and can be usually found in different types of wetlands. Do you know what a wetland is? Do you know what type of wetland? Yes, for example, a swamp would be a type of wetland. They're usually terrains that are a bit hard to navigate. Mudkips will generally know moves such as water gun and rock throw, to name a few pretty basic water type moves, as well as other types like rock throw that I mentioned. And more powerful or more experienced ones will even know moves such as, for example, water pulls, rock slide, a bunch of generally water, rock, and ground type moves with some fighting types as well. Now, when Mudkip gets enough battle experience, it will evolve. Do you know what the evolution is called? Marsh Stomp. Very good. And it becomes not only a water type, which it already was, but it also gains the ground type. So, before we begin with Marsh Stomp, are there any questions about Mudkip? Any questions about anything really? Oh, about my finger. What happened to it? Well, you see, you know how with a bunch of bird-type Pokemon, you can kind of do like this, and they will get on your arm for them to kind of land on, you know. I had a student earlier bring me their Noctowl, and he was so happy that his Hoot had finally evolved into Noctowl, and he wanted me to put him on his arm. And okay, my first mistake was that I know that Noctowls weigh 40 kilos, and I should definitely not be trying to put him on my arm like this when he weighs on average 40 kilos. But this was a small Noctowl, and my student was so excited, so I was like, we'll give it a try. I'll probably have to hold on like this, but we'll be fine. The issue, and I guess the second mistake, is that the Noctowl put one of its talons here, and the other one right here, and his talon just clawed through my finger. So I'm gonna have to wear this for a while. It's all fine though, don't worry. also fine, nothing happened. He kind of stumbled a bit, stuttered a bit, and just stayed in the air, because it can fly with its wings. Anyways, let's get back to the class, okay? Now, Mushtump, who gains the ground type after evolving, becoming a water and ground type Pokemon. As you can see, I'm going to put a little picture here. As you can see, it grows in size and is now able to stand on 2 legs. Its body remains the same color as Mudkip right here. The main difference being that its fins become black. Its fins become black. Speaking of its fins, it now has 2 fins on its tail to be able to swim even faster in the water. What's also really interesting is that its body has developed in a way to adapt to the poor footing that I said. For example, in the wetlands, swamps, the area is not so nice to traverse through. And so, Mushtump has adapted to this by developing a sort of sticky film around its body, which makes it so that it can actually move faster when moving through mud than when moving through water, which is really interesting for a Pokemon that was primarily just a water type and is meant to be able to swim, but now it can move faster through mud, which is obviously way stickier, way denser than water. Mushtumps will learn to use Mudshot upon evolving, and will typically also know how to use other strong moves, such as Muddy Water, Earth Power, to name a few. And that's very, very quickly summarized anything about Mushtump. All good. All good. I'll let you finish off the notes. So, when Mushtump gets enough experience, do you know what it evolves into? If you said Swampert, you're correct. Swampert is Mudkip's final natural stage. Natural is very important for this case, and we'll get to that later. Swampert is much, much larger than Mushtump and has a very bulky frame. I'm going to put him here as well. With strong limbs. Very, very strong limbs. We'll get to how strong later. It has grown even more gills on its head, and the one on its tail has grown even bigger and stronger. As I was saying, it's so strong, in fact, that it can push ships. If a ship has been stuck in the water, it can push it back to safety. It can swim faster than a jet ski. That's really, really fast. And it can easily smash huge, huge rocks. Swamperts can learn very, very, very powerful moves, such as Earthquake, Hydro Pump, and even moves that are not specifically water and ground type, like it is, such as Hammer Arm, which is a fighting type move. Now, is there any questions before we move on to the last sort of bit? Because, as I said, yes, exactly, you are right. Swampert is the final natural evolution. And why did I say that? That's because we have to cover Swampert's other form, I guess you can call it, which is its mega evolved form. Swampert, as a bunch of you I'm sure will know from your battling and everything, will evolve, or can evolve, into Mega Swampert. And you might be wondering, how does that happen? Well, in order to Mega Evolve your Swampert, first of all, you need to have a very strong bond with your Pokemon. Then, over here, as you can see, I have what is called a keystone. I'm going to put it on just to show you. Let me just say that you don't have to have it in your bracelet. It can be anywhere. People have this on their neck. I've seen people wear it as a ring. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that you have the actual stone. This is called a keystone. 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 And with this keystone, you can make your Swampert, or any Pokemon actually. Well, the Pokemon that have the ability to Mega Evolve, you can make him Mega Evolve. But you also need one more thing, which in Swampert's case is the Megastone called the Swampertite. 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 So you need a strong connection with your, in this case, Swampert. A keystone. 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 And a, in this case, Swampertite. A Swampertite is the specific Mega Stone for Swamperts. Now, a bunch of different Pokemons have a bunch of different stones. They're all in the Mega Stone category, but they have different names. Swamperts is called the Swampertite, but there's a bunch of different ones for different Pokemon that can Mega Evolve. Again, don't worry about this. You'll learn about all these types of stones and how they work in your geology class. Don't worry. Now, as I'm sure you know, Mega Evolution is just a temporary transformation. Temporary transformation. This means that it's not permanent. It is a temporary transformation that a Pokemon can undergo, which boosts their power significantly, a lot more. Now, Mega Swampert, I'm going to put him here as well. Mega Swampert gains even more bulk. He's even stronger. Its arms become even muscular, which is crazy to think about. It's just like, what did he need more of? I guess more muscle and even stronger than he already was. This makes it deal even more damage, pack even more of a punch, making it a truly, truly big force to be reckoned with. Just remember that Mega Evolution is only temporary, and it requires a Pokemon to exude a lot of energy. So please make sure to use it only in really, really necessary moments, or really dire moments, or situations, or battles, or anything like that. Okay. Is there any other questions that you may have about our boy Mudkip here? Yes, so he is usually one of 3 starters that are given to new trainers in the Hoenn region. The other 2 being Torchic and Trico. And obviously Mudkip is the 3rd one. Torchic is the fire type, Trico is the grass type, and Mudkip is the water type. You will learn about Trico and Torchic in another class, don't worry. Today we're learning about Mudkip. So you just need to focus on him for now. Unfortunately, I don't own a Torchic or a Trico. So we're gonna have to do them without a live Pokemon if we get to them. So, if there's no more questions for today, I think that this is all the time we have for. So, thank you very, very much for coming. Please let me know what Pokemon you would like to learn about next. Thank you very much. Say goodbye, Mudkip. Bye bye. Thank you for coming to class. See you next time. Oh, hello. Yes. Class is about to begin. I'm just so much going on with exams and everything, and I'm a fellow researcher as well. I gotta keep up my own research, so I'm always busy, as a professor should be. So, today's class, I believe, we're going to be learning about Scatterbug, and of course its evolutions as well. Let's look at Scatterbug right here. He is known as the Scattered Dust Pokemon, and we will get to that, why it gets that name in a minute. But I think first let's look at its general biology. So, as you can probably guess, Scatterbug is a bug-type Pokemon, and as you can see, it's a larva Pokemon with a relatively large head, and it has 3 white hairs coming out of the top. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 heads coming out of the top. It has this white sort of fluff, sort of ruff, kind of like a scarf around his neck. It also has very small legs and a pointy tooth. Pointy tooth. Pointy tooth that it uses to eat. It uses this tooth to eat a variety of plants, including poisonous leaves and also roots. It then uses these poisonous leaves that it ingests and turns them into a powder that it scatters all over its body. And this is where Scatterbug gets its name from, the Scattered Dust Pokemon, because it scatters dust or powder all over its body. Now, why does it do this? It's just like, is it for fun? Is it as a decoration? No, well, it could also be decoration, I guess, but it's mainly self-defense. This powder causes paralysis upon contact, and it's used to defend itself, mainly against bird-type Pokemon, but any other threat is also fine. It uses this powder also to regulate its own body temperature, so it can adapt to a lot of climates really quickly. Now, Scatterbugs only learn naturally. They only learn 6 moves. Let's go through them really quickly, okay? Those moves are Tackle, String Shot, Stun, Spore, Bug, Bite, Poison, Powder, and Rage Powder. So pretty generic, like sort of low level bug type moves and a bunch of powder moves, which makes sense because everything about him is a lot of things about him have to do with powder. However, it can also learn Struggle Bug, Pounce, and Bug Bite by a TM, which maybe doesn't help it very much in a battle, but Scatterbug is not a Pokemon that's going to be battling, being a larva Pokemon. So, because it is a larva Pokemon, it does not take very long for it to evolve into its first evolution. Okay? Before we proceed into its first evolution, is there any questions about Scatterbug? Yeah, what's up? Yes, exactly, absolutely, nailed it. Anything else? Yes, its powder is essential. Yes, we will get into that in a minute. Don't worry. Oh yes, Scatterbug is definitely one of my favorite Pokemon. I don't know what it is about him. That's why I own one. Because he's so sweet and easy to take care of. If you don't take into consideration the poisonous powder and, don't want to get paralyzed. Luckily, he's very sweet and he doesn't let me get paralyzed. Okay, let's move on to the evolution, okay? The evolution is called Spupa. I'll put it over here. Spupa is a cocoon-like Pokemon. It is the cocoon stage of the evolution. A lot of bug types, as you can probably already imagine, as you probably already know, have a larva stage, a cocoon stage, and then usually a butterfly sort of stage, but it can be something else as well. Now, Spupa, it is a Pokemon covered in a sharp and white fur, and it kind of hides itself in this sharp white fur. And it will use the poisonous powder that it has to fend off predators, which tend to be, as I mentioned earlier, flying type Pokemon. This pupa, being a larva Pokemon, learns a variety of defensive moves to help it to defend itself, such as Harden, Protect, Iron Defense, all these classic sort of defense increasing moves that larva Pokemon tend to have. Cocoon Pokemon tend to have. Again, since it's a bug cocoon Pokemon, it also doesn't take very long for it to evolve again into its final evolution. And now, this is where it gets a little bit interesting and a little bit potentially stressful, because it evolves into Vivillon. I'll put a photo of Vivillon right here. So, the first thing, which I thought was kind of interesting, is that Vivillon's Pokédex number is 666. I just thought it'd be a fun fact to share. Vivillon, as you can imagine, against the flying type butterfly Pokemon, sort of makes sense that it now can fly against a flying type. So it's now a bug and flying type Pokemon. And most importantly, and this is where it either is really cool for you or really stressful for you, or both. I personally really like it. But it's the fact that Vivillon has 20 different forms. Yes, 20 different forms. Don't worry, the only difference really between these forms is visual, and it has to do specifically with the color of its wings. I think Vivillon is a really interesting Pokemon because it is one of the only Pokemon that kind of that has different color variations to it once it evolves. Yes, so and I say 20, and this is 20 at least, because some scientists and other bug specialists are constantly researching this Pokemon, and who knows what else they might find. They might find a new form in the future. We found a bunch of forms that were, we found specifically one form recently that is only in the Paldea region. Very interesting. And we'll get to that once we look at all the forms, so don't worry about that. And also, if you study bug Pokemon in the future, or if you want to pick a path that kind of focuses more into studying bugs or Pokemon with a bunch of forms, you'll get to that, so don't worry about it. So, any quick questions before we go into Vivillon? Yes, 20 forms, yes. Yes, I think Vivillon, I think it's really interesting. I think you'll enjoy it. And you don't have to learn all the forms. There won't be like a test on like, oh, this blue form, what is it called? I don't think you'll have to get that in any test. And if you do get that in the examiner is evil. Unless specifically, of course, you're focusing on studying bug-type Pokemon. So, any more questions? Oh yes, so my finger. You won't believe it. Basically, a previous student brought me their Shelder. And I don't know what happened. Shelder, I think he must have mistook my finger for a Slowpoke's tail, because it leaped right off my student's hands into my finger, biting it. Don't know what happened. It's just what Shelders do. Thankfully nothing happened. Both the Shelder and I were fine. Unfortunately, no Slowpokes. So, no more questions. Okay, very good. Now, I say with Vivillon, we look at its general biology first and go from there. Kind of warm you up to it, you know. Now, Vivillon is no longer the scattered dust Pokemon, it is now the scale Pokemon. It is a butterfly-like Pokemon with large wings, which, as I said, and as you'll see, can have a variety of different patterns. Its body remains quite similar to its previous evolutions, still having a pretty large head, which now has 2 antennae instead of the 3 hairs that it had earlier. It maintains its very small legs and now has also 2 very small arms. You could say that its front legs kind of develop into arms. Now, differently to Scatterbug and Pupa, Vivillon actually learns a variety of new moves, such as, for example, it learns Gust on evolution, and it can eventually learn a good variety of both flying and bug type moves, such as Bug Buzz already had Poison Powder, Sleep Powder, all these powder moves, but this one is just powder. So, what does powder do? Vivillon covers the enemy or whatever it's targeting in powder, and if the target tries to use a fire type move, they will take damage instead of being able to fire that move. So I kind of cover you in the powder, and if you try to use a fire type move, the powder kind of will ignite around you and you'll get hit by the fire, and your fire type move will not come out, essentially. As you can probably guess, this is a very niche move if you're fighting anything that does not use a fire type move. The move does nothing. But it's a good way for Vivillon to learn to deal with some of its natural fire type predators. Obviously, bugs, really weak to fire. So it kind of is a good countermeasure in that sense to that one specific niche that kind of is strong against them. Now, let's go on to the colors and patterns. As I mentioned, there are 20 of them that have been discovered. So we're going to go through all of them relatively quickly, because again, they're not going to be tested on it, but I think it's cool that you know. So let's get ready, okay? Now generally, Vivillons, and this is really cool, they get their pattern based on when they were born. So their pattern is already predetermined since they were a Scatterbug. So no matter what happens to this Scatterbug, its pattern that it will get when it evolves has already been determined. It doesn't matter what happens to it, it doesn't matter where it goes, it doesn't matter, nothing matters. He already has a pattern that will happen when he is born, that when he evolves. So I'm going to need you to look at the patterns with me, okay? As a quick mention, it gets them from the conditions where they were born, right? For example, weather, temperature, location. These conditions, for a lot of them, for a bunch of them, they might seem similar. Like you might be like, okay, well, this condition was just ice, and this other condition is just ice. But we found out that it's slightly different. Scientists know about this. Again, if you move into studying bug-type Pokemon in the future, or if you learn Pokemon with different forms, I'm pretty sure you'll get a class that can teach you this in more detail. So I said there's very small differences that affect a pattern and their location of origin. Now, these small differences, though, have a massive impact of how Vivillon's pattern will be. Okay, so, are you ready for the patterns? I was going to sort them alphabetically at first, but I thought it would try to make more sense to sort them in a way so that the similar conditions for patterns, like all the ice patterns, are together, you know, so you kind of get an idea of what I mean. So, and we'll also take a short break halfway through to gather all of our thoughts, okay? Are you ready? Okay, here we go. Starting us off is the archipelago pattern, which gets its name because it is found in Vivillons born in a land with many islands, which is called an archipelago. Secondly, we have the garden pattern, which, as I'm sure you can guess, is from an area that has a lot of green and a lot of grass. Garden, like a garden, yeah, exactly. So, now we have the meadow pattern, and this pattern appears in areas that have lots of blooming flowers. So you see what I mean? It's kind of similar to the garden pattern, but this one requires flowers. Now we're going to go onto the ocean / water / beach patterns. Let's go. The marine pattern occurs near the beach in an area, and it has to, researchers have named the area with an area that has to have nice ocean breezes. I don't know about you, sounds like a perfect location to live. The ocean pattern happens in your classic beachy areas, and also areas where summer is quite prevalent. See how it sounds similar? But yeah, researchers have done all the research, and if you move into a bug researching degree in the future, I'm sure you'll learn the specifics and why. Oh, it's near the beach, but is it going to be marine pattern or is it going to be ocean pattern? Is the ocean breeze good enough to be a marine pattern, or is it very summery, so it's going to be the ocean pattern. Next up is the modern pattern. This one is found, believe it or not, in an area with a lot of sun. So your warm and sunny regions, kind of for this one. Not necessarily beach, but yeah, as you can see, the conditions are similar. And it'll be even more similar for the next one, which is the sun pattern, which is just areas that are constantly bathed in the sun. Bathed in the sun. Bathed in the sun. So again, pretty similar sort of requirements, but there's differences. The small differences can make a massive difference, which I think is really interesting how such a small like condition change at a place where a Scatterbug was born can have such a massive impact on its pattern. Let's move on to the last of the hot and sort of sunny patterns, which is the sandstorm pattern, which comes from desert areas. Now you can tell the difference there. Very dry, very hot, like a desert. Next up we have the continental pattern, and this pattern occurs when Vivillon is born in a land with a very large and vast space. Pretty simple. The high plains pattern, which is an area with high plains, as the name indicates, but it also has to be an area that doesn't have too much rain. So that's 10. That's halfway through. How are you feeling? Let's take a small break to the last 10, okay? Let's breathe a bit. Breathe in and breathe out. And let's do one more. Breathe in and out. You feeling good? Ready to go again? Perfect. So let's go with the last 10. So this is the river pattern, which is found near lands, as you can probably guess, with a lot of rivers. Very good. The savanna pattern, found in tropical climate biomes. The jungle pattern, you guessed it, in a jungle. So kind of tropical rainforests, areas sort of like that. And the monsoon pattern. This one is with areas with intense rainfall and lots and lots and lots of rain. Lots of rain. Now we move on to the three sort of snowy patterns that you can have. First we have the icy snow pattern, which is from a cold land, so your general icy biome is going to have this. And the polar pattern, which as you can guess also comes from snowy lands. And lastly, the tundra pattern, which is found in areas where the weather is severely cold. This one needs to be severely cold, not necessarily wintry, but if it's really cold, usually it's going to be wintry, right? Otherwise it might fit one of the other patterns instead. We have 3 more to go, which are the elegant pattern, which is found from scatterbugs, which evolve into Vivillons, which were born in a land with distinct seasons. So a bunch of climate changes, not necessarily rough climate changes, but just a lot of climate changes in general. And here comes the one from Paldea, which is the fancy pattern. It's found mainly in Paldea, but it's also been found to appear in other regions, which have a similar topography to Paldea's, a similar kind of climate, weather vibe to Paldea. You might also find the fancy pattern. And lastly, this is the iconic Pokeball pattern. Now this one's really interesting because it's not really known what the conditions are for this one to appear. And again, if you focus more on studying bug types in the future, you might encounter a class that will allow you to learn more about this pattern. I think it's a really interesting pattern. It looks like a Pokeball right here. I think it's really cool. Anyways, so that was 20. How do you feel? Do you have a favorite? For me, it's really hard to pick one. I think I will love whichever one Scatterbug evolves into. I don't even know it, to be honest, because the conditions are so different. I have an idea based on where I got him from, but we never know. I think my biggest takeaway is that it's so fascinating that Scatterbugs can live and thrive in so many conditions. And when they evolve, they'll always carry a part of their origins with them, no matter what, because, as I mentioned, their pattern is predetermined at birth. So you can take a Scatterbug from an icy region to a hot or deserted one, and once it becomes a Vivillon, it will still have the pattern from the icy region, and I think that's beautiful. What do you think? What are your thoughts on Scatterbug and Vivillon? Yes, I think he's great. Look at him. And he's so beautiful when he evolves. Let me know what your favorite pattern is, okay? And I think that's all the time we have for today. So, thank you very much for coming. Don't forget to let me know about your favorite pattern. And also, if there's any Pokemon that you'd like to learn about next. Thank you very much for coming, and see you next class. Bye bye. Say goodbye, Scatterbug. Bye bye bye. Very good. And lastly, Bug is strong against Psychic. Very good. Okay. Oh, hello. Yes, it is time for class. Come in. I'm just grading some papers, as I have to do as a professor. Yeah, no spoilers, but this year's class is doing pretty good. Okay, I'd like to take a bit of credit for it, but obviously, it's about how much you study and all that as well. Enough about that though. Let's focus on today's class, which is about Chikorita. As you see right here, Chikorita. Okay, so Chikorita is known as the Leaf Pokemon. And as you probably already know, it is a pure Grass-type Pokemon. That means that it is only a Grass-type Pokemon. Now Chikorita is one of the three Pokemon that trainers typically begin their adventure with in the Johto region, alongside Cyndaquil and Totodile. So, it's a pretty famous Pokemon, in the Johto region at least. Now, starting off as always with its biology. As you can see, Chikorita is very small and green. It has nice dark green buds around its neck. Dark green buds around its neck. 4 very small little legs and a small little tail as well. It has big red eyes, but although they are red, they're very, very friendly. And the most obvious feature is this beautiful leaf that it has on top of its head, right? Which usually is as large or even larger than the rest of Chikorita's whole body. Now this leaf is not just for decoration. Chikorita can use this leaf to fend off potential threats by spinning it just like this. Spinning it just like this. Spin, 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 spin. Yes, kind of like a helicopter, but with a very strong leaf. Obviously, if Chikorita was to move it, it would be a lot faster and a lot fiercer. But I'm just showing you slowly so you can see it properly for explanation purposes. However, that is not all that this leaf can do. This leaf actually emits a very strong aroma, which is very soothing and calming, which could, for example, calm a battle instead of having to use it to threaten and maybe fend away the attackers. It could just calm them down to make them not want to fight anymore. Do you want to have a smell of the aroma? I'll put it over here. Maybe you can have a small smell. Yes, it's very, very nice. Now, Chikoritas are very calm Pokemon. They actually really enjoy bathing in the sun, and they use this crucial leaf on their head to also sense the temperature and humidity of the surroundings. And it is said that Chikoritas use their leaf to find the coziest place to sleep, which honestly sounds like a pretty good use of the leaf. And I can almost guarantee that this is true, as mine right here, is always sleeping around in the comfiest corners of my house. Lastly, Chikoritas are generally found in grassland areas, so areas with a lot of grass, a lot of greenery, and they're very calm and gentle in nature. Okay, and let's actually look at some of its moves before moving on, okay? So, as you can probably expect, Chikoritas learn a lot of your sort of generic grass type moves like Vine Whip, Razor Leaf, Leech Seed, you know, the classic grass type moves that a lot of grass type Pokemon tend to learn, especially early on. And obviously it also learns moves that are not grass type, like Tackle, Growl, like most sort of unevolved Pokemon tend to do, right? But what is really interesting is that Chikoritas actually also learn Poison Powder really early on, which is not a move you'd expect from a Pokemon that is tend to be really friendly and calm, you know, and Chikorita really has no ties to the Poison type. In fact, Poison Powder is actually the only Poison type move that Chikorita or any of its evolutions can learn in any way as of now. Like no leveling up, no TMs, nothing like that. And I find it really interesting that it learns Poison Powder so early, considering that, as I said, it has no other connection to the Poison type at all. It's even weak to it, you know, so it's a bit strange. And lastly, Chikorita and its evolutions are quite defensive Pokemons, I'd rather say. Therefore, Chikorita can learn a variety of defensive and healing moves, such as Synthesis for healing, Light Screen and Reflect for mitigating damage, reducing damage from the enemy team, and other moves like Safeguard as well. Now, as Chikorita levels up, it evolves into, do you know what the evolution of Chikorita is called? If you said Bayleaf, you're correct. Now, Bayleaf maintains its pure grass type. And spoiler alert, it's going to be maintained throughout the whole of this class. Now, Bayleaf, however, gets a lot bigger than Chikorita. It gains a very long neck, and the leaf on its head is still really prevalent, like with Chikorita. But however, the buds, the little buds are on its neck, have grown into bigger leaves, which are tightly curled together. That's why they look like that. Now, Bayleaf's aroma from these leaves have this like spicy scent, and they are said to be very beneficial to those who inhale it, having not only energizing but also healing effects. It is also said that Pokemon who sleep near a Bayleaf will feel stronger, healthier, and full of energy. So, you know, get yourself a Bayleaf if you need to feel healthier and stronger and you want more energy after sleeping. Bayleaf will generally know the same moveset as Chikorita. They also typically learn stronger and more advanced, especially grass type moves such as Magical Leaf, Energy Ball, or non-grass type moves like Body Slam. Body Slam, obviously, its massive increase in how big it is really helps with Body Slam. Now, let's move on to Chikorita's last evolution for now, which is Meganium. And I want to emphasize that I said for now, because breaking news, some scientists are starting to rumor that in the future a new version of Meganium will be discovered. There have been some strange sightings around the Kalos region recently, and some scientists are convinced, in fact, that this could be an alternative evolution of Meganium, or even a mega-evolved form, I believe, in the mega-evolved form, but we don't have conclusive evidence just yet. But I just thought it'd be interesting to mention, to let you know. Maybe you'll learn more about this if you decide to become either a grass-type specialist, or you try to learn more about the mysteries of Mega Evolution. Still a lot of things that we don't know. We're always making new discoveries. There are actually quite a a bunch of really good courses that you can take when you graduate if you're interested. Anyways, before we move on to actually talking about Meganium, are there any questions in general? Yes, so after you graduate, if you focus on the Mega Evolution course, you'll learn about all the currently known Mega Evolutions, maybe some of the ones that we're investigating, knowing is this just a rumor, is this actually something that can happen, and maybe you'll even go to on the field, for example, and do some research yourself. Maybe you'll even discover a new Megastone or a new Mega Evolved Pokemon. Who knows? That's just the mystery of Pokemon, am I right? Any more questions? Are there any Mega Evolutions that might be discovered soon? So, based on, now this is just speculation, and it's based on my own research and some contacts that I have, some other fellow researchers, professors. I think that there are 3 new Mega Evolutions which are likely to be discovered soon. We have our suspicions, our research. Those being Mega Meganium, as I mentioned, Mega Feraligatr, and Mega Embor, and we believe those are going to be Mega Evolutions. However, some people believe in other stuff, such as a Mega Dragonite, which honestly I believe as well. I think that was even likelier. There have been some sightings which sound really like legit. They sound like, this could be a Mega Dragonite. And I believe this because, we have so much research, and it's pointing to we're getting like another Mega Evolution that we have not discovered yet, which is really cool. I think this is so exciting. I don't know, like, if you were to pick a Mega Evolution, which one would you pick to discover? Can you imagine something like a Mega Starmie, for example? How would that even be? This is why I dedicate myself to researching Pokemon. I think it's so exciting to make discoveries like this, Anyways, class, let's get back on track, okay? Unless there are any other more questions that you might want to ask. Oh, about my finger, yeah. Yeah, it is what it is. Basically, right, let me tell you the story. A student brought me in their Sandshrew, right, asking why it was not evolving after it had battled so much. And I thought it was strange because I know this Sandshrew, I know this student, and they battle and they win a lot of battles. So I was surprised, actually. I was like, why? How come it hasn't even evolved yet, And clearly the Sandshrew, it wants to evolve. It's been battling to try to evolve, get stronger. I take a look, I grab him, kind of like this. I take a look and I find out that it has an Everstone. It's holding an Everstone, which apparently the student and the Sandshrew were confusing as just a cool shaped rock. Everstones, as you know, they prevent a Pokemon from evolving. So I removed it, right? As soon as I removed it, I'm holding Sandshrew. As soon as I removed it, it evolves in my arms. And as you know, its evolution, Sandslash, gets a bunch of spikes on his back. And as I'm holding it, it evolves. One of the spikes just happens to pierce me in the pinky. But it's all good, it'll heal soon enough. Chikorita was there to take good care of me, and we quickly went to the doctor. No issues there, but an interesting experience. Okay, class, so unless there are any more questions related to Chikorita or its evolutions, please, let's move on to Meganium before we run out of time, okay? Okay, good. So, Meganium maintains its pure grass typing and is now known as the herb Pokemon rather than the leaf Pokemon like Chikorita and Bayleaf. It gets even bigger, and the 2 most distinct features on its head, are the one on its head and the one around its neck. As you can see, the beautiful big leaf that Chikorita and Bayleaf both have has been replaced with 2 antennae. And the leaves around its neck, or buds as Chikorita has them, and then they become leaves, have blossomed into really large pink petals. Now these petals, they still release a very calming and soothing aroma. And this part is really cool. I think this part of it is really cool. It's said that Meganium's breath, but it's not said, it's proven actually, that Meganium's breath has the power to revive dead grass and plants, which I really, really like. I think that is such a it is still a really calm Pokemon, and it has very soothing and regenerative powers that Bayleaf also has, you know. It still has its calming aroma, and it still lives in the grasslands, so in that case, it's pretty similar, if you can call it that, to its previous evolutions. Now, when it comes to moves, it learns Petal Dance upon evolving, and can learn a variety of mainly grass-type moves, such as Giga Drain, Solar Beam, and as well as also Frenzy Plant via TM. So very, very strong grass-type moves that you'd kind of expect from a fully evolved grass-type Pokemon, you know, especially a 3-stage Pokemon. Any questions so far? Oh, about any non-grass-type moves? Yeah, so I mean, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, Reflect, Light Screen, they're both Psychic-type moves, and Poison Powder was obviously a Poison-type move. But for non-status moves, Meganium can actually learn a bunch of moves via TM, which are not grass types. For example, Earthquake, which is a ground type move, Body Press, which is a fighting type move, and it can actually also learn 2 dragon type moves in Outrage and Dragon Tail, which is also pretty cool. Outrage is a bit strange because it's such a calm Pokemon that learning Outrage is a bit of unexpected, at least in my opinion. Okay, so we're almost out of time. Too many questions were asked today, I think. But it's okay. I'm here to answer the questions. This is what you're here for, to ask questions, to learn. That's what I'm here for, to answer these questions and to make sure that you take all my knowledge. So, I think as a final sort of point, I want to say that I think Chikorita definitely deserves more love, as it is maybe conveniently less like strong and an offensive Pokemon to battle with, but outside of battle especially, I think it is an ideal Pokemon to have with you on your daily life and just to spend time with. And with that being said, I think class is done. Thank you so much for coming, and we will see you next week. Say goodbye, Chikorita. Bye bye, thank you for coming. See you next class. Oh, hello. Yes, please. Come on in. I'm just finishing something. Okay. Yeah, I'm just doing some research on some stuff that we discovered last week in the Simo region. Very interesting, but it's a chat for another day. Ready for class, yeah? Alright, perfect. So, today we're learning about the fire-type Pokemon, Litten. Here he is. He's known as the Fire Cat Pokemon. Now, before we begin, I have to let you know that this is not actually my Litten. This is my friend's Litten, who recently hatched from an egg, which is why it's so small, you know. It's just a baby. Now, usually, Littens tend to be right around 40 centimeters, or 1 foot and 4 inches tall, which is around double its size. So, this one still has a lot of room to grow before it reaches its full size. Now, Litten is known as the Fire Cat Pokemon. Any guesses why? Well, as you can probably see, it's a cat, and it's a fire type. Not much more than that. Now, its main features are its fur, which is primarily black, with some red stripes on its legs and on its face. Some red stripes on its legs and on its face. A really cool fact actually about the stripes on his face is that combined with its really big and yellow eyes that are shaped in a circle, it kind of takes shape to look like one of the alchemical symbols for sulfur, which is a highly flammable element. I'll put one right here for you to see. So yeah, as you can see, this here is the alchemical sign for brimstone, which is basically an older name for silver, right? You'll have to ask your science professor if you want to know more about this, but all you have to know for now is that it's very flammable, which matches Litten's fire-type theme. As you can see, the stripes on its head, and the circle for the eyes. The circle for the eyes. I just thought it would be a little fun fact to know the meaning behind the stripes on its head, you know. Anyways, let's move on to its other features. As you may have noticed, Litten has some red whiskers, 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 whiskers. And they're also very furry, and they come out of each cheek. It has a very, very small mouth and a very small black little nose. Boop. Now, it has black pointy ears, with the inside of the ears being white. And in between the ears, it has two sort of spiky, furry hairs. They're not spiky, they're just furry. Now, lastly, we have its tail over here, right? Its tail, its tail, its tail. It's also very, very furry. And as you can see, it has this sort of tuft at the end of its tail as well, which is again very furry. Now, as you may have noticed or heard from me saying, Litten has a lot of fur, right? Litten uses this fur actually. So the way it does this is that Litten spends most of its time, you know, licking and grooming its own fur. And then all this fur that it keeps licking and licking and licking and grooming and grooming and grooming gets collected inside of his stomach. And Litten can then light it up on fire, actually, and use it to attack by spitting it as fireballs. So it licks it at all its like extra fur, and then it goes inside its belly, and there it heats up. It essentially burns it and spits it out as fireballs to attack. And what's really interesting is that these fireballs can actually change based on how it coughs. I thought it was a really interesting fact. What do you think? You see, it's also because Litten's fur produces flammable oils, right? Which allows it to burn like that and be able to use it as an attack. Again, I thought that was pretty cool. Now, Litten's fur coat actually regrows around twice a year. And when it begins to shed, Littens will actually burn their fur, which is essentially setting themselves on fire to burn away the old fur. Now, this is perfectly safe, perfectly normal. It does not actually harm the Litten, so don't worry about that, okay? This one hasn't even done it yet, because he's so young, he hasn't even had the need to shed his own fur yet. Now, Littens are usually quite solitary Pokemon, and they will typically keep to themselves, and they won't really show any emotions very easily. For example, trying to pet one if it does not trust you will usually result in you getting scratched, you know. And even if it does trust you, they don't want too much affection. And this is why it's better from time to time to just leave the Litten alone for a bit. Don't want to stretch it out, don't want it to scratch us, don't want it to do anything like that, you know. By the way, my finger, as you can see, is hurt, but it's not because this Litten scratched me, okay? This one does trust me, and it has not scratched me just yet. Anyways, let's move on. So, as you probably expect, Litten learns a variety of your low power, fire type, and normal type moves, such as Ember, Growl, Furry Swipes, you know, very generic. Very strong Littens are even able to learn moves such as Fire Fang, however, which is really nice for a cat who is fire type, you know. But they can also learn a bunch of other moves that are not fire or normal type, such as Bite, which is a dark type move, Lick, which is a ghost type move, and even the fighting type move Double Kick, which is really useful for it as well. There are a bunch of moves that it can also learn via DM, but I think we will get to those once we look at its further evolutions, okay? Now, speaking of its evolutions, I think it's time we look at the first one. So, are there any questions before we look at the first evolution of Litten? Oh, good question. So I was going to mention it later, but I guess we can say it now too. So Littens have two different abilities. those being Blaze and Intimidate. And all of the evolutions of Litten only get these two abilities as well, Blaze and Intimidate. So we can briefly talk about them now as well. Now, Blaze is the most common ability that it gets, right? And it basically increases Litten's fire type moves when Litten is in a pinch. So that means that if Litten is close to fainting, its fire type moves will do about 50% more damage, right? And this only applies to the fire type moves. So for example, Ember will get this boost, but Scratch will not. Now, the second ability it gets is Intimidate. What Intimidate does is lower the physical attack of the enemy Pokemon when Litten enters the battle. It's pretty simple, but it's actually pretty strong. Which essentially it makes the opponent do less damage just by you being there, by your presence, you know. And it could be the difference between your Pokemon taking a hit and surviving, or fainting. Anyways, I'm gonna leave you here for a bit, Litten. So, any more questions that you have? Oh, about my finger. No, nothing happened, it's okay. Let's move on, okay? Let's move on. Any more questions? Ah, yes, you are correct as well. So, very observant, very knowledgeable of you. So, Litten, yes, you're right. It's generally the first partner Pokemon that trainers starting in the Alola region will get. The other two being Rowlet and Poplio. And I think, if that's all the questions we have for now, let's move on to Litten's first evolution, which is called Torracat. Here he is. Now, Torracat is still just a fire type Pokemon, and it is still the Fire Cat Pokemon. However, Torracats get a lot bigger than Litten, usually being about 70 centimeters tall, which is about 2 feet and 4 inches tall. Oh, Litten, he's still learning to walk, you know, he's got to keep his balance. Now, Torracat, a lot bigger. A lot of its features get bigger as well, including its tail, whiskers, legs, ear, and basically everything, right? Now, the fur on the upper part of its body is mainly black. Litten, I have to make sure it doesn't fall. You can stay here for a bit. And the bottom part is mainly red. Now, its forelegs are more developed than its back or hind legs, and is even capable of bending iron with a single blow. Pretty cool. Now, the main thing you may notice is that is this yellow sort of bell, yellow orangish bell that is on Torracat's neck, kind of like here. This is a fiery organ called a flame sac. Flame sac. Flame sac. Flame sac. You can lay down a bit, that's fine. Flame sac. Now, this is a very important part of Torracat. Torracat uses this flame sac to produce flames in order to attack or do whatever it needs to do with its flames, to be honest. This spell actually responds to Torracat's emotions. This means that if Torracat is in high spirits, the flame will get hotter and it can actually shine really brightly, or even ring, you know, like a bell normally rings when Torracat uses fire type attacks. This spell actually has a lot of interesting properties and is a very important part of Torracat. For example, it can actually absorb flames from outside sources and use them against the opponent. It's kind of like a built-in flash fire ability, boosting Torracat's fire type attacks. Now, this spell is also used as a sensor, allowing Torracat to navigate in the darkness and maybe even see enemies if they are hiding in a battle or anything like that, yeah. And it's also an indicator of Torracat's well-being. So, if it's shining brightly, usually it's a healthy and nice Torracat. If it's a bit, lacking a bit of light, we might need to see what's going on. Maybe it's a bit weak, maybe it needs medical attention. So that's a very good way to know if your Torracat is healthy or not. Now, Torracats are Pokemon which generally enjoy battling. However, they also tend to be more affectionate than in their pre-evolved form, It finally kind of gets a bit more affectionate. However, you still have to be very careful because they still have very, very sharp claws, so they might leave you with some small injuries if you try to pet it too much. Yes. Like this one. This injury right here. But it was not from Litten, so it's okay. So let's move on, okay? Let's move on. No, don't talk about this, let's move on. So, Torracat learns new moves, such as Flamethrower, and a bunch of variety of other moves, which we will look at again with the last evolution. So, speaking of the final evolution, should we move on to it? Do you have any more questions related to Litten or Torracat? Not my finger. Come on, my finger is not Torracat. You really want me to tell you? Okay, well, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of want to tell too, because it was a really cool story, but it was about my research in the Simo region last week. Fine, I'll tell you, okay? Torracat, you're gonna, Litten, you're gonna sit here for a little bit, okay? Perfect. So, as I said last week, me and some professors went to the Simo region, specifically to, we went on a work trip, specifically to Eterna City, right? The work trip was great, everything was fine, but we heard that there was a building in Eterna Forest called the Old Chateau, pardon my French. It turns out that there was a bunch of strange things happening there recently, and we suspected it would have something to do with, ghost-type Pokemon, as they usually do. So, us being researchers, after all, we love these kinds of things, so we're like, we have to go have a look, right? Anyways, we go to the chateau, start looking around for anything that would help us find out what's happening, what's going on. We saw Gastlies and Mischievous. Again, nothing too out of the ordinary when it comes to like these old abandoned sort of houses. But then we entered this one room, and I could not get rid of the feeling that someone or something was watching us. And that's when I saw that the TV in the room was flickering and making static noises, right? So then I went to check it out. I got closer and closer, and I decided to click on the TV button to turn it off, right? And that's when it happened. I felt a sudden surge of electricity just going up my whole arm, and suddenly a Rotom bursts out of the screen, flying around the room like crazy, with a static laughter and mischievous eyes. Then suddenly, all the lights went off. We grouped together, and by the time that we could get some light sources going again, the Rotom was gone, and the room was completely quiet. I know. Safe to say, we ran out of there as fast as we could. We went to check my injury at the Pokemon Center and shared our findings with the local professors. So, yeah, turns out my pinky took most of the damage because for some reason the button that I used to press the TV was the pinky. Not sure why, but it's fine. Overall, I'm fine. It was just a little shock, and unfortunately, this took the biggest part of the shock. Anyways, class, I'll tell you more stories about other trips that I've done another time, okay? I think it's important today that we finish today's class and we look at Litten's final evolution, okay? So, Litten's final evolution is the Heal Pokemon, Incineroar. Now, Incineroar gained the Dark type, making it a Dark and Fire type Pokemon. Fun fact, it's the only Dark and Fire type Pokemon discovered to date, except for the Houndour line, so Houndour and Houndoom. Now, I think before we even look at its biology, we have to talk about something. Incineroar is the Heal Pokemon. What does that even mean? What is a Heal? Now, a Heal is typically a professional wrestler who portrays the villain or the bad guy of a story. It's basically like the anti-hero to the story, right? Which matches Incineroar in his personality relatively well. Now let's quickly look at its biology, okay? Incineroar finally stands on two legs, and it grows to be 1.8 meters tall, or just under 6 foot, and it also gains more muscle. Apart from that, it does maintain a lot of the general features that it had on its face. The main features now are on its chest, which has become grey, and the flames around its waist, resembling a wrestling belt. Now, this belt is produced within Incineroar's body, and as fire-type Pokemon use their fire-type attacks, such as flamethrower and stuff, from their mouth, Incineroar actually can have these flames coming out of its center of its belt. So instead of attacking with its mouth, it can actually attack from the belt that would be around its waist, which I think is pretty interesting and pretty unpredictable, Not to say that that is the only way that Incineroar can attack, because Incineroar actually really likes to get in close in battle and use its powerful limbs to deal damage. Now, they are expert in battling without holding back, to the point that if they are not trained properly, they will actually not care if there's passerbys or other Pokemon that are not in the fight, and they might accidentally hit someone who was just watching the battle, or the ref, or the other trainer by accident, However, they usually take pride in fighting opponents who are strong. In fact, if they are fighting an opponent which they deem is, too weak for them, or unworthy to fight them because it's either too weak or too injured, Incineroar will actually lose motivation to fight, or it might even get bored, which is, it's a great thing to have, but it's also not great if you're trying to win a battle and your Pokemon just kind of gives up, even though it could win easily. So Incineroars, however, they will usually attack first in a battle, and they actually get relatively violent and aggressive, and sometimes might even ignore its trainer's orders if it doesn't respect it enough, because Incineroars tend to have a very big ego. Or sometimes they might just not be in the mood to listen to someone who they don't 100% respect, That's why it's important to train them from young and to make sure that, they respect you, they have a good connection with you. Very important, because otherwise you can end up with a Pokemon that has a lot of ego and does not listen to you. So, it's very important to raise them well from when they're small so that these issues don't happen. And also because you want to have a good friend, right? You want to have someone that you can trust and you can connect with. Now, because it likes to play the villain, however, hence heal Pokemon, Incineroars do seem to get very into the paper of being a bit like villainous and stuff, but they do seem to really enjoy it when they make young Pokemon or children happy and kind of admire them, because it makes them feel like they're playing their role of being this anti-villain properly. And I think deep down they have a soft heart, and they kind of, they want to be admired and they want to be seen, even if it's as this like villainous role. It's kind of like it likes to act as a villain, but deep down it's like a supportive Pokemon, and it cares for the other Pokemon and other people. Now, let's move on to its moves, okay? Incineroar learns a bunch of strong fire and dark type moves, such as Throat Chop and Flare Blitz, for example, as well as other moves that are, for example, fighting type moves or normal type moves, such as Cross Chop, Thrash, and can learn actually a variety of moves via TM, such as Crunch and Fire Blast, as well as moves from a lot of different types, such as, and there's a long list here, so get ready. It can learn Bug type moves, such as U-Turn and Leech Life, Steel type moves, such as Iron Head, Flying type moves like Acrobatics, Shadow Claw, which is a Ghost type move, Thunder Punch, which is an Electric type move, Earthquake, which is a Ground type move, and even Outrage, which is a Dragon type move, just to name a few. That's so many types, and I think it's really cool because it adds kind of to this like antagonistic persona of a Pokemon that it kind of uses moves that it might not seem like it's able to learn at all, Now, finally, we have to look at its signature move, and I say signature move in a bit of brackets because some other Pokemon can actually learn it by a TM too, but Incineroar is the only Pokemon that can naturally learn this move, and it actually learns it upon evolving. And this move is called Dark Lariat. Now, this is a very powerful dark type move in which Incineroar kind of spreads its arms and spins, I'm not gonna spin, but kind of spins. It swings both of its arms to hit this move ignores any defense or evasion stat changes that the opponent might have undergone. So if the opponent has increased their defense a lot, doesn't matter, Darkest Lariat will do just as much damage. And last of all, Incineroar's Darkest Lariat, right, can actually evolve. So if Incineroar holds the Z crystal, Inzenium Z or Inzenium Z, and its trainer obviously has to be holding a Z ring or Z ring, Darkest Lariat can actually be upgraded once per battle, of course, once per battle, to the Z move Malicious Moonsault. Malicious Moonsault. Malicious Moonsault, which is a way stronger version of Darkest Lariat. Very, very strong move, but obviously Z moves, you can only use them once per battle, right? Because of the amount of energy that they use. And I believe that pretty much covers everything about the Litten line, and just in time as well, since, we're right out of time, it's time for the class to end. So, thank you once again so much for coming to class. Like always, let me know what you'd like to see next. And I'll see you next class, okay?